I was the last person Adrian Vale spoke to before he died. The newspapers called his death a tragic accident. The police said he had wandered through an unsecured construction barrier late at night and fallen into an abandoned underground shaft. His political opponents whispered about alcohol, exhaustion, and secret debts. Others claimed the pressure of becoming the youngest cabinet minister in the country had finally broken him. They were all wrong. Adrian knew exactly where he was going that night. 3 months before his death, he came to my apartment just after midnight. Rainwater covered his expensive black coat, and his usually perfect hair clung to his forehead. He had no security team, no driver, and no assistant. For a man whose photograph appeared in the newspaper almost every morning, he looked strangely small standing outside my door. "Daniel," he said. I saw it again. I stepped aside and let him enter. Adrian walked directly to the window and stared down at the sleeping city. From 12 floors above, the streets looked like glowing veins spreading between dark buildings. "I thought I had lost it forever," he continued. "I convinced myself that it had never been real. But tonight, there it was." What was there? He turned toward me. The green door. I had known Adrian since university. He was brilliant, ambitious, and almost frighteningly disciplined. He could remember names after hearing them once, speak for an hour without notes, and make a room full of angry people believe he understood each of them personally. He had spent his entire adult life climbing toward power. But that night, he looked terrified. He poured himself a glass of water, although his hand trembled so badly that some spilled across my table. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to listen without deciding that I am insane." The story began when Adrian was 6 years old. His mother had died shortly after his birth, and his father, a respected judge, raised him in a large, silent house in West London. Adrian's father believed affection weakened children. Mistakes were punished. Tears were ignored. Every hour had a purpose: lessons, meals, exercise, and sleep. One autumn afternoon, Adrian escaped the supervision of his elderly nanny and wandered farther from home than he had ever gone before. He passed rows of shops, crossed 2 unfamiliar streets, and eventually found himself standing beside a long, white wall. The wall was taller than any man and stretched farther than he could see in either direction. It was perfectly smooth except for one object in its center: a small green door. There was no sign, handle, or window. Dead leaves had gathered along the bottom, yet the door itself looked freshly painted. Adrian stood before it, feeling an emotion he could not explain. He did not think something dangerous waited behind it. He thought something had been waiting for him. He pushed the door. It opened without resistance. On the other side was not another street or someone's backyard. It was an enormous garden illuminated by warm golden sunlight. The cold London air disappeared behind him. Above the garden stretched a deep blue sky without a single cloud. 2 spotted leopards lay beside a stone path. Adrian should have screamed. Instead, one of the animals approached and lowered its head. He placed his hand against its fur and felt it purring beneath his fingers. Beyond the animals stood trees covered in silver fruit, fountains whose water sparkled like glass, and flowers larger than dinner plates. Birds with crimson wings moved between the branches. Children played beside a pond, laughing as though they had known Adrian all their lives. A tall woman wearing a pale blue dress appeared at the end of the path. She held out her hand. "You came back," she said. Adrian had never seen her before, yet hearing her voice filled him with such relief that he began to cry. The woman did not ask why he was alone. She did not tell him that boys should control their emotions. She simply knelt and held him until he stopped shaking. For the first time in his life, Adrian felt that he belonged somewhere. The woman led him deeper into the garden. He played games with the other children. He ate fruit that tasted like every happy memory he had never experienced. Hours seemed to pass, although the sunlight never changed. Eventually, the woman brought him to a quiet building covered in vines. Inside, another woman sat beside a large book. Its pages were thick and white, but instead of printed words, each page displayed moving scenes. Adrian watched himself as a baby sleeping in his mother's arms. He watched birthdays that had not yet happened, friendships he had not yet formed, and places he had never visited. Some scenes filled him with joy. Others vanished before he could understand them. Then he saw himself as an adult standing in front of the same green door. The older Adrian reached for it. Before he could see what happened next, the woman closed the book. "Not yet," she whispered. Adrian begged to stay, but the garden had become strangely quiet. The children stopped playing. Even the fountains seemed to hold their breath. The woman in blue escorted him back to the entrance. She kissed his forehead and placed her hand against the green door. "You may return when you are ready," she said, "but you must choose us." The door opened. Adrian stepped through and found himself back on the cold London pavement. The white wall stood behind him, but the green door had disappeared. A policeman found him crying nearly 2 miles from home. Although Adrian believed he had spent an entire day inside the garden, fewer than 3 hours had passed. His father was furious. When Adrian tried to explain where he had been, the judge accused him of lying. He struck the table with his cane and ordered Adrian to repeat the truth. Terrified, Adrian changed his story. He claimed he had become lost and invented the garden because he feared punishment. His father accepted the confession. Adrian was sent to bed without dinner, but the punishment mattered less than denying what he had seen. For days, he searched for the white wall. He never found it. Eventually, he told another boy at school. The boy laughed. By lunchtime, the entire class knew about Adrian's magical garden. They called him the Little Prince and drew green doors across his notebooks. One afternoon, 3 older boys dragged him through the neighborhood and demanded that he show them the entrance. Adrian searched until the sky grew dark, but every wall was brick, iron, or stained concrete. The boys beat him for lying. That was the day Adrian decided never to mention the garden again. Years passed. He became an exceptional student. His teachers praised his intelligence, while his father finally began treating him with something resembling respect. Adrian discovered that achievement could provide a different kind of safety. The more he accomplished, the less he thought about the door. Then, at 17, he saw it again. He was walking to an important scholarship examination when he noticed a white wall between 2 buildings. In its center stood the green door, exactly as he remembered it. The air around it seemed warmer. Adrian smelled flowers and heard children laughing somewhere beyond the wall. He stopped. His examination began in 20 minutes. Winning the scholarship would secure his university education and earn his father's approval. Opening the door might destroy everything he had worked toward. He told himself that the garden would still be there afterward. Adrian continued walking. He received the highest examination score in the school's history. That evening, he returned to the street, but the white wall was gone. In its place stood a row of ordinary houses. For several weeks, Adrian could not sleep. He kept remembering the woman's warning. "You must choose us." But ambition soon drowned out regret. Adrian attended university, became a celebrated debater, and entered politics before his 30th birthday. He told himself that the garden represented childhood. The green door was merely a dream created by a lonely boy who needed kindness. Then the door returned. The second time, Adrian was rushing to meet the woman he intended to marry. Her name was Evelyn Hart. She was thoughtful, patient, and one of the few people who could make Adrian forget about his career. That afternoon, he had purchased a ring. As his taxi crawled through traffic, Adrian noticed a white wall running alongside the road. The green door stood only a few feet away. He ordered the driver to stop. For several seconds, Adrian sat frozen with his hand on the door handle. He could almost feel the garden sunlight against his face. Then his phone rang. It was Evelyn. Adrian looked from the phone to the green door. He imagined her waiting at the restaurant, unaware that he carried a ring in his pocket. He told the driver to continue. The proposal went perfectly. Evelyn cried, said yes, and wrapped her arms around him. Yet as Adrian held her, he experienced a terrible certainty. He had made the wrong choice. Their engagement lasted 6 months. Adrian never explained why he became distant. Evelyn believed his career mattered more to him than their future, and perhaps she was right. She returned the ring and moved abroad. 3 years later, Adrian saw the green door for the 3rd time. He was travelling with 2 senior officials to a confidential meeting that would decide whether he received a position in the national government. Their car turned down a narrow street to avoid a protest. The white wall appeared on Adrian's side. The green door was already open. Through the narrow gap, he saw the garden. The woman in blue stood on the other side. She had not aged. Behind her, the children waited beside the fountain. Adrian reached for the car door. One of the officials called his name and began discussing the meeting. Adrian hesitated. If he left without explanation, the appointment would be given to someone else. Years of work would disappear in a moment. The car moved forward. The green door slowly closed. Adrian received the government position that afternoon. From that moment, his career accelerated. He became wealthy, influential, and admired. Crowds applauded when he entered rooms. Newspapers described him as a future prime minister, but each achievement felt strangely empty. He began searching for the green door at night. He drove through neighborhoods where he remembered seeing it. He studied old maps and property records. He hired researchers to locate unusual white walls without explaining why. Nothing appeared. The garden had shown itself when Adrian was too busy to enter. Now that he wanted it, the door refused to return. He became convinced that he had exhausted his chances. Then, on the night he came to my apartment, the door appeared once more. Adrian had been leaving Parliament after an emergency meeting. It was nearly midnight, and rain covered the city. His driver took an unfamiliar route because several streets were closed for construction. As their car passed an unfinished office building, Adrian saw a long white wall illuminated by a single street lamp. In its center stood the green door. He shouted for the driver to stop. But this time, the door frightened him. It did not appear warm or welcoming. There was no golden light beneath it, no sound of fountains, no scent of flowers. It simply stood in the rain. Adrian remained inside the car. "What if the garden is gone?" he asked me. "What if I waited too long?" "You said the door was still there," I replied. "It may not have been the same door." He walked back to my window. "I have spent my life choosing the thing directly in front of me. The examination, the meeting, the promotion. Every choice seemed reasonable. Every choice made me successful. But when I look back, I see that I traded everything I loved for things I was afraid to lose. You don't know what was behind that door, I said. Yes, I do. His certainty unsettled me. Adrian explained that the garden had never merely been a place. It was the life he might have lived if he had not allowed fear to make every decision. The woman, the children, and the book had offered him a choice before he understood what choosing meant. And now, I asked, now I understand. He stayed until nearly 4 in the morning. Before leaving, he made me promise that if he saw the door again, I would not try to stop him. I thought exhaustion had triggered some kind of breakdown. I urged him to see a doctor. Adrian smiled and thanked me for listening. At the door to my apartment, he paused. I used to believe the garden wanted me because I was special, he said, but perhaps it waits for everyone. Perhaps most people simply stop seeing the entrance. Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. 2 nights later, Adrian disappeared. His driver had dropped him near his home shortly after 11. Security cameras showed him walking alone through the rain. At 11:17, he stopped beside a temporary white construction barrier. The recording became distorted for 13 seconds. When the image returned, Adrian was gone. Workers discovered his body the next morning at the bottom of an unfinished railway shaft behind the barrier. A small maintenance door had been left unlocked. It was painted green. The authorities concluded that Adrian had mistaken the maintenance entrance for another passage and fallen in the darkness. The explanation was logical. It was also impossible. I visited the site before the barrier was removed. The maintenance door opened toward a narrow metal staircase. Adrian would have needed to descend 14 steps, cross a platform, and climb over a safety railing before reaching the shaft. A man could not simply open the door and fall. More troubling was the condition of his body. There was mud on Adrian's shoes, but investigators found no matching soil anywhere around the construction site. The mud contained traces of plants that did not grow naturally in Britain. His face showed no terror. He looked peaceful. At the funeral, Adrian's father stood beside the grave without crying. Evelyn returned from overseas and placed the old engagement ring on the coffin. Hundreds of politicians attended, each praising Adrian's accomplishments. They spoke about the positions he held, the laws he passed, and the future he might have achieved. No one spoke about whether he had ever been happy. After the service, an officer returned Adrian's personal belongings to me. His wallet, phone, and watch were sealed inside a clear plastic bag. There was also something the official report had not mentioned. Clutched tightly in Adrian's right hand was a small silver leaf. I had never seen a plant like it. Its surface shimmered beneath the light, and although it had been removed from its tree days earlier, it remained warm. That night, I placed the leaf on my desk. At exactly midnight, my apartment filled with the scent of flowers. Then I heard laughter in the hallway. I opened my front door and found no one outside. But at the far end of the corridor, where there had always been a blank grey wall, I saw something that made my heart stop. A small green door. Warm golden light glowed beneath it. From somewhere on the other side, Adrian called my name. I stepped toward it. Then my phone rang. It was my employer reminding me about an important presentation the next morning. I looked at the phone. I looked back at the door. For one terrible moment, I understood Adrian completely. There would always be another meeting, another responsibility, another perfectly reasonable excuse. I turned off the phone. The green door began to close. I ran, and this time I did not let it disappear.